With the pre-season done, it was once more time for the talking to stop and the engines to start, as the F1 circus reconvened in Rio de Janeiro for the Brazilian Grand Prix. Testing had shown that the McLarens were still the cars to beat, but the new Ferrari had also been putting in some good times, as had Senna in the new Lotus. But as ever, the important thing was what would happen on race weekend. Minardi were, as expected, the only one of the three new teams to make the trip, while Tollman had also remained at home without any tyres to run on, though their team leader Stefan Johansson was in attendance, which was lucky for him because Stefan Belloff and Ken Tyrrell were having a bit of a contract dispute, and German Stefan found himself suspended for the weekend, so Swedish Stefan stepped back into the Tyrrell seat. All of which meant that with just 25 entries, all would qualify as long as they put in a time. Qualifying turned a few heads, as despite expectations it was the Lotus boys of De Angelis and Senna who set the early pace, and looked like they had the front row locked out until last-minute gung-ho efforts by Alboreto and Rosberg, the latter with a slipping clutch, put them on pole and relegated the JPS cars to row 2, with Team Old Boy Mansell kicking off his Williams career in 5th, alongside Prost, René Arnoux 7th in the second Ferrari, then Piquet, with Lauda beginning his title defence from 9th, just ahead of Warwick and Tambay. Johansson was 23rd, just over a second off his temporary teammate Brundle, but over 4 seconds ahead of Baldi in the Spirit, who was in turn nearly 3 seconds ahead of Pierluigi Martini. The Minardi team would begin their F1 career from the back of the grid over 16 seconds off the pace. They might have done better if Martini hadn't blown his engine on Friday, which the inexperienced Minardi mechanics couldn't get repaired in time for Saturday's session. The men from Faenza had a new VFY in the car come Sunday morning though, and everyone lined up on the grid on a typically scorching Rio day. This was Alboreto's second career pole, and he'd won the last time at Zolder last year, so hopes were high for Ferrari to begin the year on a good note, as Michele led the grid away for the formation lap. With the new rear wings leading to less downforce, most teams were running softer tyres and planning to make pit stops at about half distance. When the lights went green on the 1985 season, it was Keke Rosberg who got the best start, going ahead of Alboreto as De Angelis and Mansell went for the first corner alongside the Ferrari, only for the Briton to go flying off and get going again at the back of the field. His new teammate Rosberg, however, was flying in the new Williams FW10 and pulling out a lead over Alboreto, while Prost had come up to third already. Behind him were De Angelis and Senna, then Arnoux and Piquet, then Lauda. Piquet had another home race to forget as his transmission failed him on lap 3, while Alboreto caught back up to Rosberg and started looking for a way past into the lead. Baldi came in to retire his Spirit with a turbo failure, and a lap later Mansell's race was officially over when his damaged exhaust failed and set the back of his car on fire. The top three were running close together, with Senna now ahead of De Angelis, a conservative few seconds behind them, and Alboreto took the lead on lap 10 when Rosberg's turbo blew, with Hainaut also having had an off-camera accident. That meant the Williams, Brabham and Spirit teams were all packing up early. Rosberg actually rolled to a stop in the McLaren pit while a Lotus mechanic frantically signalled to them to put the fire out, but all was eventually sorted out and the car rolled to where it needed to go. With Prost now second, Lauda was also on the move, passing De Angelis for fourth and then taking third from Senna a few laps later, as Prost followed Alboreto closely. There seemed a certain inevitability already to things. Alboreto would have some sort of problem, Prost and Lauda would sweep through and record another McLaren 1-2, and Alan himself seemed in no huge hurry to get past the Ferrari. He nearly went through when Alboreto seemed to falter slightly approaching a group of backmarkers, then at the end of the lap, Michele missed a gear and Alan simply drove past into the lead. Alboreto didn't have much chance of retaking the place because he now had Lauda filling his mirrors. Elsewhere, Patrese came in with a puncture on lap 20, but the damage to the chassis was enough to put him out, and then the stands erupted as Lauda slowed and Ayrton Senna retook third place. Nicky's computer fuel management system had gone on the fritz and was feeding fuel to the engine only sporadically, so there was nothing much he could do but come into the pits and retire on lap 27. With half distance approaching, the first of the pit stoppers was De Angelis, but a slow stop saw him stationary for over 18 seconds and dropped to 6th, behind Arnoux, who was under attack from a feisty De Cesaris, a little too feisty as it turned out, as the Ligier driver rear-ended the Ferrari and went out, while Arnoux limped back round to the pits with a flapping rear tyre. Prost came in from the lead and was away again before second-placed Alboreto pulled in on the same lap, just before Arnoux finally made it back to the pits to have his tyres changed. Senna came in from third, the lap after Prost and Arnoux, and another slow Lotus stop saw him stop for 16 seconds. while Lauda took the McLaren out for an exploratory couple of laps to see if the team had fixed the computer. By the time the pit stops had shaken out, everything was as it had been, with Prost, Alboreto and Senna the top three, followed by De Angelis, Tambay and Alliot going very well in the new Ram Hart. Behind them, Arnoux had got the bit between his teeth and was rapidly making his way up through the order, albeit now lapped by Prost. Martini pulled in with engine problems on about two-third distance, followed by Cheever with the same trouble, but by now the top end of the field had rather spread itself out, with about 25 seconds between each of Prost, Alboreto, Senna and De Angelis, with Tambay fifth and Lafitte, now up to 6 past Alliot, having both been lapped. The heat, now well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 Celsius in the cockpit, was also sapping a lot of the energy from the drivers. Warwick had come in with a bad misfire and the Renault team had spent a lot of time changing his spark plugs, only to forget to change his tyres at the same time, so he had to come back in a few laps later to do that, which pretty much wrecked any slim chance he had of getting anything out of the afternoon. On lap 48, Senna's electrics failed, robbing the Brazilian fans of a home podium finisher and moving De Angelis, Tambay and Lafitte up, and Arnoux into the points. René lost no time making his way past his two countrymen into 4th place, while the Brazilian director concentrated on Prost's serene progress. And that was where they finished after 61 laps. Alain Prost cruised to his 17th career win, backing right off towards the end, which allowed Alboreto to close to within 4 seconds at the flag, with those two the only drivers on the lead lap. Elio De Angelis finished 3rd, with Arnoux an excellent 4th after his accident, and Tambay and Lafitte making up an entirely Franco-Italian top 6. Johansson and Brundle were 7th and 8th in the Tyrrells, and perhaps unexpectedly in the heat and with all the usual early season niggles, over half the cars finished the race. McLaren and Prost would be happy with their day's work, Prost's 3rd win in a row and McLaren's 8th, while the Ferrari and Lotus teams would be encouraged by their pace too, as would the Ram team whose new car had looked pretty competitive. The jury was still out on the new Williams after a short race, Jacques Lafitte marked his return to Ligier with a point, and the Tyrrells looked good even without turbo engines. It hadn't been a classic race in all honesty, but there was certainly plenty of food for thought as the teams packed up to return to Europe for the Portuguese Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time.